Sweet, and we're back. Not a big deal. But yeah, so already have 3 different ways that we can make a surface. Of course, network surface, 3-point to 4-point tool surface, and lofting. And to be fair, there's like 20 different more, right? So you're definitely open to search for yourself or even type on YouTube, right? How to make surfaces or different surfaces in Rhino. So anyway, next thing that we want to do is we want to cut this in half. So, well, depending on how complex our objects are, this might be quite a task, right? And there's a couple of ways to cut something. So let's go ahead and make a copy of this entirely, because I definitely don't want to do all that again. And I'll just make another one. Not a big deal. I don't know, which one should we go with? That one's kind of nice. I really do like that one. That is pretty cool. Let's do it. Let's see if it works anyway. So really, a part of the instructions, I just need to slice my object in half and then kind of show that final object or final 2 objects of those splits, because they both might be interesting, but I'll leave that up to you. Again, this is kind of just practice, right? We're not so tied up of like, you know, how cool is the object, how not cool is the object. It's really how well is it presented and communicated. So in our case, there's a couple of ways to split this. Technically, I could use the Boolean, right? However, I would need a solid surface, so I could extrude, right? Or sorry, offset surface. Offset, but instead of just regular offset, I could offset the surface. I can make it 6 inches thick, enter. Enter again. It's really gonna think about it. It is pretty complex on this one. But yeah, I can give it a thickness. Not too bad, and of course it could Boolean split it. You guys saw what I did there? Basically just made it a little bit thicker than the surface it was. I'm going to go back on that one because I can use Boolean, difference, split, all those kinds of things. But another good one is called trim. You can also trim stuff in 3 dimensions. So in my case, I don't know, I think I'm going to split it not too complexly. That seems like a pretty good, interesting split. So what's nice is I can take the object or the part that I'm trimming with, type in trim, and try to select just the object. Aha! And as you can see, it definitely got rid of it. I don't know, maybe I don't want to get rid of it too much. I might need another copy. I'm going to hit enter to basically tell the computer I'm done, and move it and see what it came up with. Pretty wild stuff. And arguably, it even got rid of some of the things that, you know, you probably want to recap again, right? Or let's face it, that's pretty complex. It's probably not going to cap, to be completely fair. I might have to rebuild it myself using this wonderful guy right here. I may even have to simplify it a little bit, right? And maybe further trim some things off and make sure that I get the correct points. As you can see how dangerous that is. So let's fool around a little bit. Let's go back. Thank goodness for edit undo. But yeah, already right there, 2 different ways that we can of course split this object. One being of course Boolean split that you should be getting familiar with, and also trim. So that's looking pretty sweet too. Let's try that one. Again, take the piece, type in trim, enter, and click on the side that you want to take off. In my case, we do have to hit enter to complete the command. But yeah, it'll even make floating objects. And definitely a very useful tool if you're kind of just getting into things, but let's face it, I mean, we're not left over with a solid object, so trim might not be the best way to go here. Let's try something else. So let's get this guy out of the way. Maybe try one of our other surfaces, maybe a simpler one. That might be kind of nice. It's looking pretty sweet so far. Now we could use trim here too, or again, like that previous method, we can offset surface. I'm just gonna make it a slightly thicker, so even like, I mean, honestly, any thickness, it just needs to have thickness. So even an inch, and is barely noticeable. I'll hit enter, and you'll notice almost like nothing changes. It's just a very small thickness, right? But again, we need that because, well, Now it's a solid three-dimensional object and not a surface. You got to remember, in this computer program, surface is a two-dimensional object. In reality, there's no such thing as a two-dimensional object. All things in our three-dimensional world have thickness, right? Whether it's an atom thick or hundreds of billions. Anyway, at least according to the paradigm. So let's take the object, Boolean split or difference or two objects, really up to you. Again, one of my favorites is split. So I'm going to take that piece and that piece, enter, and we'll see that it sort of gave us a sight section in there real quick. But nicely enough, we should probably have a closed object, and that is definitely what we want. Right, because we can definitely use that and start to see the dimensionality of, I mean, I don't quite see an architectural project in here, but hey, you know, some might. But we definitely have a closed and much less complex space. Does that make sense, guys? You guys see how I did that? I had to turn the surface into an object. And of course, arguably, there's a lot of ways to do that too. So, but yeah, pretty much we're done. Now I have to make it digestible for somebody. So of course, how are we on time? Oh, we're pretty good on time. Let's get into it. So I'm going to need, I think, a max of 3 steps. Ooh, that's hard. I think I actually meant to put minimum of 3 steps. Yeah, I think I meant to put minimum. So you can scratch that out. In fact, let's scratch that out. Not max, but minimum. So maybe right there. Yeah. So minimum 3 steps. Honestly, you don't want to do like 10 steps because, let's face it, if you had a 10-step diagram for a bowl of cereal, you're going to be like, forget this diagram, I'm just going to make a bowl of cereal, right? I'll just wing it, right? This is almost too confusing. So now it's a little bit of a test of what do you really want to show, and how do you show it, right? We got a lot of good examples from exercise 1 with different arrows, different line types, and different things like that. I guess we could get into Illustrator a little bit, but as I was mentioning to the class before, if you find yourself just absolutely bored by this exercise, it's kind of a repeat maybe of some other things that you've done in class before. Extra credit, let's see if you can make one of these objects. Again, that's just extra credit. It's above and beyond material. If you're still struggling and learning these tools, please do not feel obligated to do so. A couple of things before we get into Illustrator today. Obviously today we have the pinup from exercise 1. What we're doing currently is the tutorial for exercise 2. Next class, it'll be a working class day, so definitely ask questions and be here to get your answers for those questions. By week 4, as you know, I only give a week for these little exercises, and they're to build speed. So already due by next Tuesday, and we'll see if we make the deadline. And already get into exercise 3, which is a lot of fun. I think it's actually stairs or topography. I can't remember, but we'll get into it. So let's pick 3 steps. Man, I don't know what it's going to be. It's usually actually a pretty hard one. I'm going to go with 4 steps maybe. That looks like a step I should keep. So I'm going to take that one, make a copy. I don't know. I kind of have infinite space, infinite material. So when in doubt, I usually just make another copy and just get rid of things I don't need, such as that thing. And that was from 3 semesters ago. Anyway, so maybe there's my step 1. I'm gonna go with step 2. Maybe this piece. Kind of interesting. And again, I'm just kind of taking the whole step because, I don't know, I may want to further communicate with it or something like that. Zoom in onto those a little bit better. Sweet. And, I don't know, 3, 4. Kind of want to get the surface involved. That's true. What surface did we end up going with? That one? Okay. So I don't know, maybe I want to show kind of this piece and then an all-together piece. So I'm going to copy that. Actually copied both of those. Those are both pretty interesting. Kind of on their own. Maybe I show them off later. It's a pretty interesting piece. Alright. So let's make a new piece. Take my 11 by 17. Really, I don't need a technical 11 by 17, so I'm going to do 11 feet by 17 feet, just again to keep that proportion. As long as I hold shift on any of my gumball stuff, it's going to of course keep it proportional. And I'm not really too worried about scale yet. So I want to stick to an isometric view, or at least something. I mean, don't get me wrong, the directions didn't say I have to stay in an isometric view, so maybe I do try out some things. Why not? After all though, I do want somebody to be able to read it, so be very careful about all the different views that you have available. Very often saying very little means communicating a lot more, right? Because in saying very little, you're not confusing anybody. Right? However, I'll let that be up to you. And we got at least our 3 or 4 steps, including a final. So we're ready to go. Now, for the sake of tutorial and speed, there's actually just a couple of things I wanted to show in Illustrator. So let's go ahead and actually do those things. So I'm not really going to kind of do the same steps. And again, I don't want you to copy me. Of course, you guys all have practice with diagram steps. And maybe just need a few more tools and stuff to express with in Illustrator. So let's go over some of those things. But we need something on the page. So let's make 2D some situations. At least some of these steps. Specifically for myself, something like that one. It's looking pretty good. Get the whole piece. Don't really need those. I'm gonna hold Command and that piece and make 2D. In my case, a couple of things that maybe I didn't get to mention last time that will become important today is hidden lines and maintain source layers and group output. That's, yeah, definitely a good default to have. Of course, it's going to make those for us. It's going to put them off on the center of our C-plane. Sweet. And I'll just put them off in space. Not a big deal. Let's get this one as well. I don't know, maybe we switch up the angle. I don't know, I don't want to confuse anybody too much. And honestly, I kind of want to match the angle that it just had. So I may need to take a look at my piece and either line those up for myself, right? Fake it till I make it. Usually I'm pretty good at stuff like that. But I could, again, just go and set my view. So set my view, isometric, and northwest. Sweet. Obviously, wrong side, but that's okay for today. You'll see the text also flips. It's sometimes annoying for me because I kind of use it as my direction. But it does flip so that you can always read it. And it is kind of nice. Did not used to do that. Another grouped piece for us, wonderful. Comes in a group. There's our second piece. And I wanted to show some cool stuff with this. So let's get rid of that one. Maybe put this in between. And give us a little bit more space on that object. Might need to zoom into my camera a little bit better. Sweet. And let's move those out. Don't want too much overlap. Maybe I'm going to use a transparency actually to sort of hide and show all at the same time. We'll take that piece. And it's about right. Of course, I could dial it in too. Set camera. Ooh, set view, sorry. I think I did northwest last time, so southwest. Not exactly the view, but hey, kind of the same thing going on. Let's do that. Take it, not take it, make 2D. Alright, we got something at least to throw into Illustrator real quick. Again, this isn't really, I'm trying to make it part of your assignment, but at the same time, it's more like Illustrator tools now. I just want to get something so that we can use those Illustrator tools and not go over the exact same stuff over and over again. Actually, this is looking pretty sweet, not gonna lie. Oh, God! So one thing about having your control points on is you can accidentally select only your control points and suddenly shift entire thousands of lines. Should be okay as long as I don't click. If I don't click, it should be okay. Voila, gotta love the Mac. Anyway, I'm gonna edit undo that and just move it this time. Yeah, if you accidentally click on those gumball stuff, it can be detrimental, but that's okay. We didn't click, and to be fair, also on the Mac, it automatically saves, which is really nice. When it crashes, you just open it up and it goes, hey, we noticed your file crashed, and it goes back to the last command that you used, which is, to be fair, zooming out is also a command, so it saves after every single command. Anyway, it's pretty good. Got some hierarchy in there. This shape's probably too big, but hey, we can shrink it. And again, I would do all my drawing here. And to be fair, one thing that I didn't get to go over last time is the hatch tool. So a lot of you guys were like, how do I use shade and shadow here? And I kind of just let you do it if you knew how, and don't worry about it until the next assignment. So I can also type in hatch, which is basically the same thing as saying pocher or fill in. Pocher is of course the French word for it, but it basically means to fill in, right? So pocher is usually how I refer to it as. However, digitally, the vocabulary is called a hatch. Again, I don't know who made up these words. To me, it always makes me think of eggs, Same with the word clutch. That's actually, it means a bunch of eggs. But people are like, man, that's clutch. And I'm like, that's a bunch of eggs? Anyway. So we'll hatch it. Press enter. And we definitely want to use a boundary mode. So in our case, usually you want to select the curves that you want to use. And the reason I like to use boundary mode is, well, it's a little bit easier. I can click on the object itself, enter, and just click on the inside. In fact, it's going to take a little time to kind of figure some things out, but it's going to turn it into a solid shape. Once I press enter again, it's going to go, oh, okay, do you want that actually as thousands of lines? Do you want it as a solid green? I'm going to choose solid just because I want to manipulate it a little bit better and easier in Illustrator. So I can do that by, of course, just making it solid at first and giving it transparency later, or different opacities. So I'm going to press apply, and sweet, I'm ready to get into Illustrator. Probably should be more organized with my line weights. In fact, I can tell that I don't have very many, so I'm going to have maybe a little bit of a struggle in Illustrator, but that's okay. In fact, I kind of want to struggle a little bit just in case you forgot, and show you what you can do to ease the pain and the timing issue. Right? You don't want to spend too much time in Illustrator. That's just kind of a given rule. So I'm going to file, export selected, and we'll just use it as my test line. So exercise 2, test lines. In my case, I don't need a DWG. I need an Illustrator file or a DWG. So in my case, hopefully you guys kind of figured out which one works best for your computer. Scale, we don't really need a scale, so I'm just going to snapshot the current view. Doesn't matter, it's a vector line. It doesn't have any scale, so it really doesn't matter. And we'll get into that as we go. Don't want to make it too complex yet. Too many things thrown at you. Let's get Illustrator popping. Let's get this recording out of the way. And we're still recording for our part 2 recording. Sweet. And that is, wow. I started it at 7:50. It's still going. So definitely the reason why I don't upload videos here at school. And probably it's going to fail anyway. So we'll see. But we got that piece going. Let's go ahead and save that so we can get Illustrator running a little bit faster. Never a good idea to have multiple programs open at a time. They're all using the same chips in your computer. If you find that your computer's struggling, close one program and kind of isolate to another. I think that's pretty much common sense. Also, if you have a computer with a fan inside of it, it's definitely in your best intention, and there's definitely tons of freeware out there where you can control your fans, right? If you specifically have a Mac, if you type in Mac fan control, so Mac's fan control, a really great tool. A colder computer is a happier, faster computer. That's just kind of the name of the game. And most laptops, where they fail is actually heat transfer. So the reason that your laptop only lasted 1 or 2 years is because you let it get too hot. 200 degrees is definitely the max temperature for most chips. However, you really want to keep it at 165 Fahrenheit. You didn't think you were going to learn that much about computers today, but temperature is the name of the game. And apparently Closing Rhino 8 is struggling today. Again, I'm using a lot of processing power to make these recordings, and that's okay. Let's go ahead and open that up in Illustrator. Just gonna file open. Let's do a couple of different things. So desktop, exercise 2 lines. And by default, I was way off the center plane, so it's probably way down here. Yep, there it is. In fact, it's so down there I can't even get to it. So I'm going to go select and all, right? It's gonna hopefully get all of everything that's in there, and I can just move it accordingly. Sweet. At least get it in towards the right spot. And I did go over last time why that is. Obviously, you just want to get it towards your C-plane or move your C-plane towards your drawing. Not a big deal. First things first, definitely want to go to the document setup, edit artboards, and change this to 11 by 17. I noticed that it's in pixels, so maybe I need my ruler, so Command R or Control R. I'm gonna right click and select inches. And by default, it's actually pretty close. So 17 by 11. And again, as long as I have that rectangle and it was proportional to that 11 by 17, it should fit accordingly. So of course I gotta hold shift, otherwise it'll never fit. Of course, holding shift keeps it proportional. It looks like I forgot a surface. Oh, okay, I got it. Not too shabby. And eventually we'll want that kind of practice for when we actually do stuff in scale. But you guys know me, I like to do one at a time. We don't really need the boundary in this case, but I can't get rid of it as a whole layer, so we'll get rid of the boundary on that one. I don't want to start off with my surface yet. Let's start off with the lines. Sweet, we got all of those, and this happens to be the hidden line, so I definitely want to use a dash line. I don't think I quite necessarily got to go over dash lines. Maybe I did. I don't know, I do it so many times I can't remember. We've even got some lines way out here, so it's really going to get everything. In my case, I'm going to use a soft black. I'm going to go with something a little bit thicker, 0.46, enter. And I'm going to unselect dash and reselect dash just to kind of reset it. And go with a 2 and a 3. And zoom in, see how that looks. Not too shabby. In fact, in some cases you can tell I might need to delete a line or two, or maybe it's kind of overlapping, right, in a very strange and weird way, to where I just need to take one, choose, and delete one, right? So in some cases you do have to kind of look at these drawings again, and you can kind of tell when there's definitely double lines. Anyway, not a huge deal. That's actually looking pretty good in terms of amount. Not too shabby. It's a little confusing, but then again, we made a very confusing object. So we may need some more information here. Let's get some more. All right. That's looks like it's going to be maybe some of the larger line weights. Obviously don't want green. I'm going to go with something pretty dark, pretty thick. Let's go with 0.88. Nice. All right, starting to get somewhere. Maybe actually a little lighter on this one. And a little smaller. But again, can you imagine how much that would take you in a drafting class? I mean, that was easily 4 hours of work right there, right? Not too shabby. Yeah, definitely have some doubles. Might have to kind of go in there and delete what is not needed. Okay. Not too shabby. Right, I can kind of tell what's going on, and arguably I could still push lines that are in the further background a little bit thinner. Right, sometimes I would just do that one at a time though, right, to really kind of get the point across. And some of these things, they're very minute. Maybe nobody will notice, but I can guarantee you the mind is a very powerful thing. And even though we're not always conscious of, like, if I asked you how many windows are in this room, you know what's weird? Everybody in this room, you've seen them all. Your brain actually counted them all, but you're not really conscious of the number. You were never taught to be that way, right? In fact, there's entire schools that use remote viewing and they blindfold children, right? And they put these little like flashcards in front of them, and they have them telepathically know things, right? It's quite strange, actually. But it's really unique and actually breaking the laws of physics as we know it. Anyway, it's a CIA document. I'll get into it later, but maybe not for the recording. Just kind of want to throw it out there that we don't actually know everything, but our brains do for some reason. They're definitely getting a lot of information. Anyway, let's finish these layers. I'm not sure what this layer is about. I'm definitely getting something, but oh, okay. Maybe another hidden piece in there. Maybe just reading it. Oh, it's the hidden curves. Yeah, definitely just read it. So one of the other things that I wanted to go over was that you can simply copy something that you've already done, right? Maybe you did already the numbers and things like that. And maybe I just, want to apply the exact same properties of that last hidden line layer to this hidden line layer. So easily what I can do is select everything in that layer. I can use my eyedropper tool, which is right there, or the letter I, and very carefully select the exact line that I want to copy. So in my case, it's probably this one. Boom. Just like that. Again, that would have arguably taken forever in another program, or if I had to draw it by hand. Moving on, let's get the next one. Alright, we got some pieces in there. Oh, definitely the major pieces. So maybe a little bit darker. Not exactly quite perfect black because of the printers. And that's really just a given rule. I think I remember using 0.88, so I'm going to stick with that. Sweet, not too shabby. And last but not least, our surface. And you'll notice it kind of looks a lot like the way that it looked in Rhino. So again, one thing that I can show you is, well, now it's a hatched layer. It's an actual piece or filled in portion. And to be fair, we could do this in Illustrator, and arguably it has its challenges, whether it be Live Paint tool or, don't get me wrong, I don't want to teach you to be a graphic artist, but in computer graphics I kind of am, right, in a way. However, we're not making poster boards or, little signs like this, like computer lab rules. That's definitely, a graphic artist. But to be fair, we make diagrams too. It's just much more complex spatial situations. So in our case, we might want to use some transparency. May want to even use an accent color. One of my favorite accent colors is definitely cyan. And we can further control the opacity. So in my case, one of my favorites is about 20 to 30%. And we start to get this phenomenal transparency with some of the items. Now there's not enough items there to make it look transparent, right? There's kind of some in there. And in fact, the computer itself was already fully aware of what object was behind us. So it even filled in those, right? Or turned them into hidden lines. So I might need to take those lines specifically, just those two, and quite literally move them to another, right? Now it's not going to change the exact dimension or the properties of that stroke. So I may need to use my eyedropper tool and realign those, right? So that I can sort of faux get this involved, right? Now, don't get me wrong, I know a lot of us just want to take this and move it so that I can see it in there, right? I can't really do that in Illustrator. That's something that, of course, I'd want to do in Rhino, right? However, don't get me wrong, I can draw some lines. Could take a straight line tool and do straight line things for sure. And maybe I get a 6 and 6 on this one. That way it's a little more noticeable. Okay, push that back. And I got a couple of them so that I could take that exact same dimension and move it across. Again, not the best program for drawing stuff, not gonna lie. But we can get enough in there. Start to make it somewhat recognizable. And it starts to be pretty interesting in there, right? Definitely start to see it as a surface colliding with these two objects. Arguably, I'd probably want to get rid of this part. And how could I get rid of that part? At least in Illustrator. Well, I can get a pen tool. I can lock all these. And yes, I would definitely lock all of them all. Make a new layer and call it fixes. That way I kind of know for the future. And make a solid object, right? In my case, white. So that I can hide this piece. If I use the pen tool, I can sort of use these as anchors and create a new object. That whitens that out. Oh, I might need to actually put this layer in the back. Or slightly in the front. Oh, maybe I need another one, right? Or draw more. Okay, so I'm gonna continue on my fix layer. I can even add to my points. So you'll notice, you know, I could draw a whole nother triangle, or I can add to my shape. Can't remember which tool it is. No, it's not the curvature tool. Ah, there we go. I gotta hold and add some anchor points. So I'm just gonna add an anchor point. I'm gonna use my anchor tool, select that point, and fix it. So again, I didn't have to go all the way back to Rhino and fix it, or add some more hatches, or things like that. But there are some tips and tricks, right, that we can kind of do to make things a little easier for us. One of them, just add another layer. Hide that layer. And of course, sometimes it works, of course sometimes it doesn't, and it really depends on what you use. Now in this case, if I want to make that white, uh-oh, that's a little bit harder, right? I mean, not the end of the world either. I could use the fix, my fix layer, add another piece, pen tool, and I could fake it till I make it. Or I can click and realize that you can do curvilinear lines as well. Not gonna lie, this is pretty hard to draw in. I really don't recommend it to anybody, which is why we don't do it, because I struggled for years sitting there trying to make things work. But you can try, by all means. I've gotten pretty good at it, so I don't know, maybe we do practice these things. But again, very simple, very easy. There were some other tips and tricks that we can go over. I don't really want to get into live paint and things like that. But I think the hatch tool can go a long way. Some of you guys really want to use color. I'd really recommend, if you use color, only use one. You can say a lot more with one color, and using it as an accent, a mover, a shifter, and actually to grab an attention, right? Whereas, you know, this guy didn't get the memo on using accent color, right? And you can see certain signs with a graphic tool. What's the accent color do? Grab your attention. Why are stop signs there? Because they grab your attention, right? They don't use multicolor, they don't flat. In fact, in all universal countries, they use the same color, red. Well, Europe, they use green exit signs, which I guess is arguable. You can see green really well in smoke, and you can see red really well in smoke. But unfortunately, I can't show you this diagram right here, but if you see it, you know, it's all over the place. They use every single color involved, and it's too much, and very often far too much of a distraction for understanding spatial objects. So anyway, definitely like a take 2 of exercise 1, but clearly using different commands and a few more tricks in Illustrator, such as hatch and all the things that we can change. Questions, comments, concerns? Anything come up? Write it down while you're going. Fair enough. All right, keep it at that.